Welcome to OOO, an out of ordinary podcast where we dig deep into case studies and the nitty gritty of Web3 marketing. You'll find here all the amazing people that are building Web3, so stick to us as we undress their marketing secrets and learn how to build amazing products and brands. Hello, everyone. I'm Alex, your fellow Web3 marketer and your host on Out of Ordinary podcast. Let me introduce you to my guest. Ksenia is CMO at Premia Finance and Marketing and Strategy Mentor at Outlier Ventures and the Blocks Accelerators. With 9 years of experience in marketing across Web2 and Web3 projects, she focuses on creating and implementing efficient marketing strategies that bring brand awareness and drive product users via traditional and crypto-native marketing tactics. Hi, Ksenia. How are you?
Hi, Alex. I'm doing well. Thank you. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for being with us today. I'm really excited that we're gonna have this episode together because we've been talking for a while, and now we're finally recording it. Yay!
Exactly. I'm super excited as well, and thank you for inviting.
Tell us a bit about yourself, your background, and how you got into Web3. This is something that I'm always asking my guests, and I think you're better than me to tell your story.
Sure. I think it's always interesting to hear how people from the space actually got to the space. So my story was a bit random, I would say. I got to Web3 through the recommendation from somebody. And the intricacy of the story is that I still don't know who that was, who actually recommended me. But I started working with a startup in the Web3 space as their interim CMO. And then I was so interested in everything that was happening. I learned so much in the first few months that I just decided to stay in this space for good. And basically, this is how my journey started into, let's say, real Web3 marketing. Since then, I've been working as a CMO for a couple of projects, mainly in DeFi, but also with some inclusion of gaming and NFT. And also on the side, I'm mentoring Outlier Ventures and the Blocks Accelerators, where I have a chance to meet with some incredible founders and just see what's happening in the industry and what are the latest trends.
You told me you worked a lot on DeFi projects and NFT related projects, but you chose to specialize in blockchain projects, right?
Yeah, exactly. So
why is that, and what's so special about this industry? Sorry to have interrupted you, though.
No, not interrupting. So I chose to specialize on blockchain projects, and I would say I didn't really choose DeFi in particular, but it kind of worked out for me that most of my experience lies in the DeFi industry. For me, the blockchain industry is something incredible, to be honest, in terms of how much change is happening, how much energy is happening in this space. And I think this was my real hook, something that drew me to the space, just because I was thinking, wow, there are so many innovations, there are so many incredible people in the space, and the learning curve is just, I think it's impossible to replicate it in any other industry.
Something I'm very curious about, because you've been working with several projects, and I think you have a pretty good idea of what I'm gonna ask you right now. What kind of marketers do you think are needed in the space?
Probably my question is going to be that at the current stage, any type of marketer, but I can put them into several categories. In terms of specialization, first of all, I think the space needs good generalists. So let's say people who can take the positions of chief marketing officer or head of marketing, or even head of product marketing, which is really needed for some projects at the current stage. So here I would say that you need to have good understanding of the technology itself, good understanding of different applications of those technologies, how you can use Web3 for marketing, and also good understanding of the projects in the space. So you need to be very, I would say, observant and be able to grasp ideas and grasp the trends, and then create something unique for your particular project and put it into one solid strategy. And then you also need people who are specializing on different channels. I would say that majority of demand in marketing now lies still on social media, in community management, in content. So the key pillars of marketing in Web 2, the fundamentals, moving to Web 3 marketing.
I was asking this because, yes, I have the same impression. Let's say that a lot of companies are hiring like social media managers and community managers, but at the same time, I feel like the more it's going to evolve, the more types of people will be needed, like branding and head of marketing, and as you said, like people that actually understand the industry. And in this regard, I wanted to ask you something else. Working in startups is hard. You know it, I know it. And how do you position yourself as a lead? Sometimes there's a big pushback from the founders.
I think it's a great question. And especially I see now as current micro trend, talking more about the mindset, the mentality, and actually how you need to position yourself in the Web3 as an industry, um, rather than opposed to talking solely about how you can learn the technology itself. Um, I think, first of all, what I noticed about the space and what everyone will notice when they come to Web3 is that it's run by developers. So it's a particular type of mentality, it's a particular type of thinking about the way things should be structured and what is actually important. So, working with different projects, I encountered the situations where um, I was hired for marketing purposes, but then along the way, we realized that founders are not ready to actually invest nor their time nor money to any marketing efforts, which of course will never lead into any great result, as you can imagine. Um, but also, I think it really depends how you position yourself, and you really need to understand what are your core strengths. Is it are you good at creating the strategy, for example? Are you good at understanding what branding techniques are needed? Are you good at different parts of performance or data driven marketing? Are you more of a community marketer? So I think it starts with understanding who you are and what are your key assets as a person, as a specialist, and then going deeper into what kind of project do you want to work for. So I think a lot of things depend on the company culture. And in the cultures where you can really thrive are probably the cultures where there is a synergy between the founders and the technical team and marketing slash business team.
I think that's the place where it can also have the biggest impact, right?
For sure.
I found myself like mostly in Web 2 situations working with startups where they would always tell me, I'm not the marketing person, but this is what I would do. But this is why we
Exactly.
hired you. I'm like, then let me do my job. I mean, like, stop
I
telling
think
me what to do.
it's always tricky, right? Because as a developer, what I figured is that it's more I can't say it's a linear job, but I would say it's more of a linear job than what marketers do. So when developers try to assess it exactly using the same frameworks they are usually using for development, it doesn't lead anywhere. It's a completely different animal, right? So a, there's a lot of there are lots of moving parts. There is a lot of creativity in the marketing realm. So I think it's just like when founders understand that marketing is one of the core components of making their project successful, this is when the real work can start.
I like that. So basically, with this podcast, I'm trying to pick up from your knowledge and other people's knowledge and share it with my audience. And I know you're a big advocate of education in Web3 as well. And we talked about like the fact that um, we need a lot of marketers in the space. So I was wondering, like, why do you think education right now is important? And if you can tell me, like, how you try to contribute, let's say.
Mm-hmm. I'm a big fan of education in general, and I think I'm doing lots of courses, reading different articles, and just trying to keep up with everything that's happening. And especially in Web3 and in the blockchain space, because there is a lot, right? There are different it almost feels like there are different pockets of information. You have a lot of people who are voicing their opinions, and you don't always know what opinion is right or are any of them correct in general. So I feel like in Web3, also a lot of educational aspects are falling into how to trade the tokens, what blockchain is, and how you can actually gain money by being in the industry. But there are not enough resources for people who want to move their career to the Web3 space. Like, let's say, you have some resources for developers where you can learn how to code in the languages that are needed for blockchain projects. But if you are actually a business person, you basically don't know where to go from there, how to start deepening your knowledge and understanding how to like kickstart your new career from day one.
Yeah, I totally feel you. I feel like I think a lot of us have felt lost when starting in the space. But you recently launched a marketing course and took it upon yourself to onboard more marketers into Web3. Can you tell me a bit about your mission and what aspects are you focusing on in your course?
Yes. A little caveat, my course is currently on pause because unfortunately the platform stopped existing, the platform with which I was launching it before. So I'm searching for a new home for the course and probably adding some extra bits and bobs here and there.
Maybe a Web3 platform.
Maybe a Web3 platform. That would be really interesting. But my initial idea was exactly that. I couldn't find resources for marketing people in the industry. And I had a chat with my acquaintance, and we were discussing that knowledge is basically a kind of a commodity, right? So you can productize knowledge. And I think it's interesting for me personally to hear, to listen to people's stories and to try to understand how I can convert their experience into my experience. And I'm also, while I'm working, I'm doing a lot of competitor research constantly. So I was thinking that throughout the years that I'm working in marketing, and especially when I'm focusing on Web3, I created a couple of my own frameworks of how to assess the projects, how to talk to founders, what information to get from them, and how to convert this information into a compelling marketing strategy. And from there, how to actually execute this strategy to the point that the project becomes successful and there's brand awareness, there are users coming to the platform. So I thought basically, why not create a course out of it where I can share my experience, my personal tips, and things I learned by either studying things about the industry or actively being a participant of Web3 and Web3 marketing. Why not share this with people who might find it useful?
Now I kind of want to get into the nitty gritty. Let's say, what do you think you need to know before creating a strategy in Web3? Because I think like maybe I'm not so sure if your course starts like this, but I think it's one of the basics that anybody should know.
Exactly. This is exactly how it starts. So when I was working on the course, I was thinking about marketers of different kinds. So let's say marketers who are starting in Web3 and they didn't have any prior Web2 experience. Marketers who are coming from Web2 into Web3 and they will need this additional layer to their knowledge. And also maybe project founders who are not at the place right now to hire the marketing teams or CMOs or heads of marketing, but they want to understand like how everything should be structured to set the company for more success in the future. So in my thinking, you need to have the foundations to build the marketing strategy and to bring it to life. So what I mean by the foundations is gathering as much information as possible for the product, for the industry where this product is, because even now in Web3, you have so many things, right? You have DeFi, you have the gaming industry, you have NFT collections, you have million of different things, and also a lot of subgroups inside each of those bigger categories. So I think it's very important to understand what your product is, what your team is doing, what is your vision, what you actually want to see in the future by launching your product or service, and also to have a great understanding like where exactly you are, what your competitors are doing, and what your users are interested in. So when you have all these three categories, like essentially your product slash team slash project, then your environment, including competitors, and some industry specifics. And then when you know your audience and what actually interests them, this is where you can start your marketing strategy.
Do you think it's different than Web 2 than Web 3, or like it's a lot different in this sense? Or it's a lot easier to start in Web 3 than Web 2? Or how do you feel
I
about that?
think I think yes and no. It's probably a little easier to start in Web 2 because you have more access to data. In Web 3, I would say it really depends on the type of project that you have, because some projects are very hardcore into Web 3 and they don't want to collect any data about their users. And this is where it gets tricky for any marketer, because essentially you're kind of blindfolded. You don't know anything about people you're talking to, and you need to use a different set of techniques to kind of drag some bits of information out of your users in different ways, like talking to them through community tactics, doing some surveys, or just like being very observant. So definitely more complicated in terms of information as compared to Web 2. But I think in general, the foundations for any marketing campaign or any marketing strategy are more or less the same. So if you know how the process should be structured, if you have the understanding of marketing fundamentals in Web 2, you're going to be fine in Web 3 with a little added nudge.
Yeah, I actually don't think the Web 2 knowledge is enough, to be honest, or the basics. But because I think like in Web 3, at least from what I've noticed, is that there's so many projects and there's so many things to know about the industry or to discover about the industry that like if you don't know that, it's almost impossible to do anything.
Might be. I think again really depends on the project because there are so many intricacies in there. I would say like if you want to join this space and if you want to work, let's say, with a centralized provider, you will need to have less Web3 specific knowledge. If you want to go to a decentralized protocol, obviously you will need to specialize a bit more. But I'm thinking in terms of marketing, it's probably a bit of an easier entry point to Web3 compared to developers, let's say, because you can actually get to the project and depending on your skills or depending on your background, you can start working your way through it. You can get quite a lot of knowledge from your team, from competitors, from the industry participants. So I think it's not easy, but it's definitely doable.
Yeah, I feel like I keep like going on and on with this, but at the same time, I feel like there's more knowledge on the dev side compared to like other roles in Web3. I'm not talking about marketing only, but biz dev, for example, or partnerships or community engagement and so on. I think sometimes they come like with very specific needs, and like need to figure out your way to go around this and to make it work.
For sure. I think probably one of the most helpful things that I've learned, and I'm still learning and just trying to make a mental note of it. Nobody knows everything. And I think it's very refreshing when you're talking to developers and then all of a sudden you ask a question and they're like, oh, I don't know that. It's not my domain. Or like, to be honest, I learned this yesterday. I find it incredible all the time because as a marketer, I always have this feeling that it's never enough. It doesn't matter how much I know. I'm not going to be at the same level of technical knowledge or the product knowledge as developers. So I feel like thinking that everybody has their gray areas really helps me a lot.
Yeah, I think in Web3 especially, I think it's very easy to have an imposter syndrome. So
Of course.
It's important to keep this like mental note. Last time we spoke, we touched on team building and especially building marketing teams. What are some things you noticed evolve in this sense?
I think definitely in terms of marketing teams, everything becomes more, I would say, solid because initially, even if we think that 3 years is not too far away from the current moment, but things in some parts changed dramatically. So initially, I think project founders had more or less zero understanding of who exactly they want to have on board, like what type of roles, what type of people. They were hiring CMOs and heads of marketing to do everything, including like posting on social media and doing the tiny things that those people didn't do maybe for the past 5 years. So you can imagine that the results and the expectations were sometimes mismatched or not aligned from the beginning. So now I think there's more understanding of what value marketing brings and also more focus on marketing for this reason. Because when you understand what's the return on investment, you're more eager to invest. And I personally think that teams and people who work for you are the best investment that any company can make. So I think now the trend that I see in different teams is that they have a bit of a clear understanding that until a certain point, they maybe don't need a generalist marketing. They just need somebody who's taking care of community, taking care of writing content and posting on social media. When they grow a bit further, they can hire somebody who will generate ideas for them, who will analyze their community and get a more data driven approach. So I'd say this is what I see as the main trend now.
We touched a bit on social media managers and community managers, and I wanted to ask you, what kind of social media do we have in Web3?
We have quite a few platforms in Web3, but I think the most interesting ones in terms of their capabilities and the most used ones at the moment are obviously Twitter, which is also known as crypto Twitter. This is where things are still happening. Discord as well, which I call Discord borderline community in social media because I think it has features of both. Also, there are platforms like Reddit, which I feel like are being used slightly less compared to the past few years. Also, you have platforms like Medium, which are social media slash content platform. And of course, different platforms of Web3 social media kind that are evolving, things like Lens and competitors of Lens.
When it comes to Reddit, I actually think it's a bit underutilized.
Might be. I think it's just the design of Reddit itself. For me, it was always ambiguous, to be honest. I was never a big fan and it kind of never grew on me because I think it's just like, looks like a huge board for all the information. While like I like Discord, for example, because everything is well structured. You can create different channels, you can assign roles, and you can organize it way better. While on Reddit, it's just like, it's kind of a lot of information at the same place. And especially as a new user, you don't know where to go because the design is also quite specific and it's not like any other social media or community platform.
Yeah, I totally feel you. But when it comes to content and choosing your platform, what do you think are some best performing types of content out there?
I think that's an interesting question because I would probably flip it. It's difficult to say what is the best performing type of content because it really depends on not only what your product is and what your project is, but I would say like on the time of the cycle and the crypto market. And also it depends on algorithm changes. As we know, platforms really love to tweak algorithms to keep us up to date. But I would say that what I found performing best is kind of a cycle of content. So not just a particular type of social media post or an article, but treating each announcement as a mini marketing campaign. So let's say if it's a partnership, there should be an announcement as a long form of content, a thread depicting the key points of the article, series of tweets in support of it, some memeing never hurts, some engagement activity to add to it. So, and also like something like an AMA between the partners. So, treating it as kind of a mini content cycle in itself.
Um, I also want to touch on a very controversial subject, at least for me, PR. What about PR? Should you do it by yourself or work with an agency? What do you think of it? And what kind of media coverage should you get? Should you get any? Because I think branding and PR is very important, and Web2 and Web3 for like any company doesn't matter. And I've heard a lot of discussions about this subject, and I would like to know what you think of it.
I feel for PR because I think it's one of the marketing channels that was really heavily abused in the past few years in crypto. And a lot of projects did it wrong or just didn't know like why exactly they're doing it. And PR as a type of marketing channel, it's very expensive. So if you do it correctly, you need to understand what is your goal, and you need to understand how to measure whether PR is done well. So I feel like PR got really bad reputation because people were spending lots of money on it and didn't see the immediate results. Um, I think, first of all, when I'm working with projects, I'm trying to assess whether they benefit from PR. Because my thinking at the current stage of the crypto market, if your project is focused on users, consumers, and if it's kind of lower entry barrier, you can benefit from PR if it's done correctly. Um, Also, if you need this reputational nudge or if you need to show thought leadership, PR is one of the top alleys to follow. But at the same time, if your project is in a niche industry, or if you don't simply have that much money for marketing, you can definitely utilize your budget way better using other parts of the marketing mix.
I mean, like, I recently met a PR person of an exchange, if I'm not mistaken, and she was telling us a bit about what she does. And I think not, I don't think, I'm sure, like it wasn't just the classic PR that as we know it with like press releases or like pushing content here and there. And somebody else, another example I have is somebody that dropped me an email this morning, that a PR person, and she was the PR of an agency in Web3, and she asked me if I want to do an episode with their founder, and she gave me a small intro of like who they are. This could be also an efficient way of doing PR, let's say, as not as we know it, but as we could know it, or we could integrate it in our marketing efforts in general.
Yes, for sure. I think what's interesting about the Web3 space as well is that anything can be called PR. So you can have PR as typical press releases and written information. You can have also in the written format thought leadership pieces or opinion raisers done by the founders, which is also PR. You can have different things that the agency is setting up for you, like partnership opportunities or AMAs, any speaking opportunities, or even the Web3 PR agencies are dealing with events. So they can set up the event for your project, or they can sign you up to be a speaker, or do the workshop for you. So I think really depends what you want to do, where your project is in its roadmap. Like if you're in the infancy, probably you will not get that much of PR because I see PR as a longer game. So it's not like you try it for a month and you don't see results right away and you finish with it. I think you should do it at least for 6 months to see any results. I personally had some good experiences with PR. But I think I was very meticulous in choosing the agency, and in also like I found that you will get a lot of response from PR if you work with them very closely. So, don't expect any agency, not just the PR agency, to work magic for you. It really depends on what information you feed them, what angles are you trying to pursue. So it has to be like a very collaborative work, because in any case, they're not part of the team. They will not have as good understanding of what's happening with you and where you want to go next as you would have as the part of the project.
My guess is that in Web3, there are people, or like there's some secret sauces, let's say. And I was wondering, like, what do some of these people with experience in the space know and others don't?
That's a great question. I think there are lots of different tiny things or tiny tricks. For me, as I mentioned already, one of the secret sauces is that nobody knows everything. And I think what I find very impressive in the Web3 space is that it's very supportive and very collaborative. While from the side, when you're just starting, maybe, or if you want to like switch perspective a bit from one part of Web3 space to another, it feels like it's a very scary space. There are lots of different terms. There are people speaking something that almost feels like a different language. But I think when you actually start participating and start asking questions, you find that it's a very receptive space. So there's a lot that is happening, and there are a lot of opportunities for you to grow. Probably that would be one of the secrets.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of knowledge in the space, and I think you just need to. It's a wild, wild west, but at the same time, like I think as long as you find what resonates with you and what you think would help you grow, and the people that you can follow to learn from, I think maybe that could be your secret sauce, I'd say.
Exactly. I think it's just incredible how much diversity there is in the space. If you even talk about conferences, like I've been to East Denver for the first time, and I was really impressed how many different people you can see there, in terms of you can almost like group them into different categories. Hope it doesn't sound too bad, but you have people who are running their business in, let's say, very Web2 way. They have their name and their face to everything. They start with thought leadership. They basically, they personally vouch for their project. But at the same time, you have people who are, let's call them complete degens, who were in the space for ages, who never share their real name. They always have an avatar. And for me, it was very interesting to see like how those completely polar opposite categories can not only coexist, but sometimes like very successfully work together.
But I mean, like you as a founder, like showing your face and being present, like it's not necessarily a bad thing in Web3, right? Like I'm a
No,
huge fan of that, though.
yeah, I think it's just, it depends what's comfortable for people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe like as you say, maybe if there are a lot of developers like building in the space, they might not feel very comfortable putting their face, let's there out there. But at the same time, maybe their product is so good that people can just talk about it, and that's it. They don't need to
Exactly.
be
They
out
can
there.
just put their voice
Yeah.
without putting their face.
Let's talk examples. Can you please give me an example of a project, a campaign you've worked on, and what are some of the best tips you can share with us today?
Sure. So I had quite a few, and I'm always trying to think about the projects not in terms of like one particular campaign, but how it results on the whole roadmap. But the one I want to share, I think it's one of my most interesting experiences to date, is my current project. So I work as a CMO of Premier Finance, which is the decentralized options protocol. And for me, it's a completely new experience because it feels like a very niche segment of DeFi. So on top of all the DeFi knowledge, people also need to have the options knowledge. So as you can imagine, there are not so many options traders, and there are some jokes in this space that 50 options protocols are competing for 2 options traders currently. So one of our main goals is to kind of grow our target audience. So as there are not so many DeFi options traders in the space, we need to convert people who are trading traditional options or people who are trading cryptocurrency tokens into DeFi options traders. So education here comes as one of the key elements. And we're currently working on building the academy that will walk any user from complete beginner to an options pro through different types of content about the options, about Premium Finance as a platform, about the strategies you can execute on the platform or elsewhere in the DeFi option space. And we're working on a lot of interesting mechanics to work on that. So first of all, there are going to be a lot of different parts of a lot of different formats of how we're going to present the content. So you can expect written information, audio format, and videos as well. And also we are experimenting with different platforms for NFT gating, for credentials. So the platform is going to be really gamified, which I think is not so common in the industry. There are some people dabbling in that, but there is nothing that's like one platform that gives you all of that.
I actually think, or at least from what I've seen or from what I've noticed, I think it's something a lot of platforms are looking at, like the gamification, even for B2C or B2B. But everybody wants to give some kind of reward.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually like that. Like I'm not a huge fan, but I'm not against it. But I would actually like to try it out. Let's say to see how that would work in my favor.
For sure. I think also what's impressive, at least for me in this space, I was talking to some community members, and we gathered a group of really vocal people, and I was asking them for their opinions on different like things that we want to test in marketing. And I noticed that every time we try to do some marketing campaigns of the kind like do XYZ action and we will give you some tokens or even like some cash reward, people were not so interested. And I think it's a huge shift in terms of mentality. Like people don't want to get money for what they do because they've been doing this for quite a prolonged period of time. Now they want sort of social validation. So I think this is the time when platforms that do credentials or that do like NFT gated roles or token gated roles, they really come to an interesting point because there's so much that can be done to create not just like community on Discord, but to create the community that would be so powerful that they will be like an extension, like a part of your team.
To me, like Web3, it's not about, I feel like Web3 looks so far away in terms of like development and online and so on and social media and doing everything online and meeting all these people. But at the same time, I feel like it has a very, very strong component of community. And I know everybody's been talking about it, but I'm not talking about like just online communities, but I feel like people want to be part of something that where they feel like they belong, where they can share their passions and their knowledge with other people in real life, online, on Discord. Some before this recording, you also mentioned to me that in East Denver, you met people that you've never met before, but you've been working with them for so long. And I think this is something that it's very, very powerful. It becomes more powerful in the Web3 space.
Exactly, because I feel like it's giving so much freedom. Not only I met some people with whom I've been working and I met them at East Denver for the first time. I actually met my team for the first time at East Denver.
Okay.
And it was so interesting because, you interact with those people every day and then you're like, yeah, now it makes sense. And I think in real life is really important. And like, anything you do through a camera is also important because it gives you this added dimension to the person's character. But for me, the Web3 space is very liberating because you can literally be anywhere in the world and work with people from other parts of the world. Like the only thing you need to tackle is time zones. But apart from that, I think it's very impressive in terms of you don't need anymore to tailor your life to your job. You can create a synergy between what you want to do in your personal and professional lives.
Ksenia, you mentioned a bit earlier about doing a lot of integrations with like all kinds of tools in the Web3 space. And I was wondering if you can give me an example of a tool or a community or newsletter or book, whatever you want, that you would recommend us using.
Sure. So in terms of community management, I was going through different platforms, and I think the two that I can really pinpoint is, first of all, Chasm. And they seem to be amazing with integrations because I hear about Chasm from everyone. And they have really great set of features, which is probably the fullest set of features for community analytics that I came across. Also, I really liked Karma Community. They do something really nice because it's essentially a free tool. So anyone can use it. It's super easy to integrate it. You just click one button and you can access your Discord data and Twitter data. From what I know, they're still in beta phase. That's why it's free, because they need a lot of feedback. And they had some nice analytics on there. In terms of some of the platforms that I'm going through now, and with whom Premier Finance is thinking to work, is Wrap3 and Sesame Labs. We were discussing with them things like social credentials for our community members, like dynamically changing roles, badges, NFT gating, and on all the, let's say, onboarding and organizational aspects of the community.
I have another one, but I'll pass it to you. We actually we did an episode with them last week. I was about to say yesterday. Last week, they're called Interact, and they also do a lot of community. They're focused more like on the community growth analytics. But this could be something that you might be able to find useful, especially when you're growing your community and you're trying to figure out like who is who, where are these people coming from, how are they engaging, on which platforms, and so on.
Sounds really good because it's usually very daunting.
Yeah, I know. Well, Ksenia, thank you so much for doing this episode with us. It's been fun, and I think it's been very insightful. And I'm looking forward to have you here with another episode to share more about like your work in your impact in the Web3 space.
Thank you so much for inviting, Alex. I would be very happy to come on board once again.
Thank you again, and till soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to our Out of Ordinary podcast. If you enjoyed this episode and you would like to hear more content like this, then open up the podcast app and click on the follow or subscribe button. It takes less than 5 seconds and is the single best thing you can do to support the show and stay up to date to more marketing strategies that are being used in the Web3 space.